What are you going to use your electronic phone? Or what are you going to use on
Yeah. How are you today?
New stuff is
What was that? Good, great, good. I haven't woke up yet. Musician time. Glad you're here. I think Curtis. Where's my friend Curtis? Curtis from the evening crowd. Well, good morning, everyone. So, I'm up here, not to do the whole Old Testament in 10 minutes. So I talk real fast. Can we do it? I don't want to rush it. But, before we start, Pastor Joe come up here really quick. He knows he's coming. So Pastor Joe is celebrating the 40th anniversary of his 20th birthday. Close enough, right? So if you guys would stand, please, and we're going to sing Happy Birthday. Anniversary, wait, no, it's his birthday. All right, you can do it in your most obnoxious, loud voice. Let's just, all right, here we ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Pastor Joe. Happy birthday to you. God is great is a pretty big concept. If you think about the greatness of God, anybody out there, can you shout something that's great about God to me? What's great? Grace. Wow, good. Forgiven. Rah! No one ever says why. It is too. Yeah, it's part of who he is, right? His goodness. Do you want to, if you can, if you'd like to just stand with us as we begin by praising God, proclaiming his greatness. hidden yourself from us. And each day you unfold a new thought in our lives, a new reality of who you are. And we bless you because you are great. Splendor of the King. Oh,
golden majesty. Let all the earth rejoice. Let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. Trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? Oh, see how great is our God. Age to age you stand. Is our God, and all will see how great is our God.
And he is great. And that was great singing this morning, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to call your attention to just a couple of things in the bulletin. I know that you can read yourself. But first of all, the pot next Sunday night. Here's the little statement that goes with it. You don't bring a pot and there's no luck. So, now if you are, are so needy that you can't, by all means, come anyway. It is not just for members. Only members can vote. But if you really want to get to know the church, it's probably good to come to a meeting like this one. Please notice out on the bulletin board this morning there is a list that's going to be on the ballot. If you have questions, if you would call this week. Next Sunday morning there should be a financial report. It would be good if you have questions if you would call before the meeting so that we can try to handle some of those that way. And then one other thing I wanted to remind you of, let's see here. I guess it's family bowling. I don't know if that has been filled up yet or not. It's all filled up. Family bowling? No, sorry about that. And the Bible studies start this week on Thursday, both the men and the women. So we're glad you're here this morning, and we're going to continue our worship together.
Who is this person up here?
Well, since we got off of schedule, I forgot. I introduced him first service, but I obviously forgot this service. I know. You just sang about my birthday? Yeah. Yeah, and it is a good question for another reason, because if you'll notice in your bulletin, it says the closing song will be by Sherry Wolf, who is his wife, but it will not be. You are singing at the end, are you not? So don't confuse that. This is Sherry Wolf. Sherry, if you will stand, please. And this is Dell Wolf, and he is here to lead our music, and you consider him. So sing your hearts out. By the way, Dell is a graduate of University of Arizona. For any of you who are ASU fans, I'm so sorry. He also graduated from Western Seminary, and I couldn't even begin to say all of the things that he plays. Now, he says he fakes them, but anyway, you'll see part of that this morning, and we're glad to have you here. God bless you. Again, like I told you, I don't usually do this, so I don't know. Yes, stand and greet.
Jesus, we do worship you with our lives. Our souls are thirsty for you, especially in a dry place like this. It's just such a great parallel. We're thirsty for you, the living water. So we turn to you. You might fill us up. You might fill us up with this purpose that you might work in us through your Holy Spirit, bring yourself glory in our lives. The things we say, the things that we do, the attitudes that we hold. Jesus, accomplish this in us in your name. Amen. Be seated.
You know, there are some things in life that you do, and you can do them on your own. There are some sports that are just sports you do, and then there are things that you can't do by yourself, and you need a team, like this one.
So freshman class at the Naval Academy is tradition.
Pride in the camaraderie.
The climb to the top of the Herndon Monument in the heart of campus officially marks the end of their first year at the Academy. The climb has happened since 1940. What makes this such a sight that attracts so many and keeps eyes glued on the 21-foot statue is that, first, it's covered with lard. And as the plebes climb and give each other a foot or shoulder up, water is sprayed just to make things more difficult. One of them must get to the top, knock off the Dixie cup that's there, and replace it with an upperclassman's hat. 1 hour and 32 minutes into the climb, mission accomplished. Pat Lean from Orlando, Florida, was the one who tossed the hat that stuck to the top of the monument.
Just found myself at the top.
They've been doing this since 1940, and it's been interesting to watch. I mean, it's a whole tradition there. There are guys who are with that group that, again, they do their individual sports. But this is one that you can't do by yourself. You need the teamwork. And that is something that we're going to discover in the passage that we're dealing with this morning, although I will assure you we will not get to all of the idea this morning. John Maxwell, who was a pastor in San Diego for many years, is he's written book after book after book on leadership and teamwork. He says, teamwork makes the dream work. There are times you just cannot do it on your own. Jesus made it very clear, and then through the Apostle Paul, that it's a whole body, and God uses the body to accomplish His will on this earth. And Moses had some things to learn about that. If you haven't been with us for the past few weeks, we are studying through the life of Moses in order to see principles in his life that will help us in our lives as well. You follow along as I read. It's a rather lengthy portion, but I think you'll get the idea as we read through it. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was camped. By the way, his wife had left him. You know, he said, I'm going to go down and deliver the people. And she said, wacko of wackos, I'm not going with you, and you're sure not taking my boys. And so she stayed back home. But now Jethro has brought her and the two sons to him. And in the wilderness where he was camped at the Mount of God, he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law, Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons with her. I'm not sure if there's a little hint there when he says her two sons. We may just be reading something from our culture into his, so I don't know. But Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. There seems to be no problem between them. He bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare and went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had befallen them on the journey, and how the Lord had delivered them. It came about the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood about Moses from the morning until the evening. Now, when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, what is this thing that you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, and all the people stand about you from morning until evening? And then Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God, and when they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I judge between them, or between a man and his neighbor, and make known the statutes of God and his laws. Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing that you are doing is not good. You will surely wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, for the task is too heavy for you, and you cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You be the people's representative before God, and you bring the disputes to God. And then teach them the statutes and the laws, and make known to them the way in which they are to walk, and the work they are to do. Furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and tens. Let them judge the people at all times, and let it be that every major dispute they will bring to you, but every minor dispute they themselves will judge. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all the people also will go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. I've sent this little verse to my son-in-law, just so he might know. Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. They judged the people at all times. The difficult dispute they would bring to Moses, but every minor dispute they themselves would judge. Then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he went his way into his own tent. No matter what you do in ministry, whether you are in, as they call it, vocational Christian service, or whether you teach Sunday school, whatever you do, there are many folks in ministry of some kind or another who tend to believe the old statement, I would rather burn out than rust out. But either one of them, not putting much effort into things or putting too much effort into things and not allowing others to be part of it, both of them make you ineffective for God, really. And it's something that Moses had to learn. Now, next week, we will talk more about the second part of this because there are two complementary themes here. I was going to talk about teamwork, and we see that in the second part. But then I noticed there is a lot that we can see about the leadership of Moses and actually a failure in the life of Moses that we need to learn from as well. And as we look at these things, I know that there's some of you who may say, well, these don't sound very spiritual. I mean, talking about leadership, that sounds secular. You get to talk to businessmen and so forth. Hey, our people most of them have already retired. We'd rather hear things about holiness and sanctification and justification, eschatology and all these things. It doesn't sound spiritual. Listen, folks, the Word of God says of itself that these things were written in the previous times so we might be helped by them, so that we would learn through what went on in Moses' life, through Jacob's life, through Abraham's life, through Daniel's life. All of these things teach us, make us look at our own selves, and it can be a very spiritual help in how we serve God. And number two, we put on another slide which made all of these slides go off. I'm sorry, but it says they don't sound very applicable. I'm not a pastor, you say. I'm not even a Sunday school teacher. I have no place of leadership. But almost everyone has some place of leadership, whether they realize it or not. Even if you are a grandmother or a grandfather or you work somewhere, there are lines within our relationships with people in which we do lead some. The question is whether we lead them effectively. The question is whether we lead them spiritually. And as you see at the very end, there are some ways in which you and I need to be encouraged, even more in the way that we minister. This is the one we're going to look at this morning, though. I want you to see a few things about leadership. Next week, because it is our annual meeting, then we're going to talk about teamwork, and it will actually be a great help to us as we come to our meeting next Sunday night. Lessons in leadership. As I told the first service, it ought to be pretty obvious what this lesson in leadership is, but it's just real easy to read through the passage and just almost not even notice it. But it is vital for anyone who is in any kind of leadership or working with people, at least in a spiritual sense, to notice this. The principle is this: God's glory. God's glory must be our passion. We tend to think that God ought to do everything for us. We tend to think that our happiness is really what God is there for. He's there to make sure our life goes smoothly, to make sure that we get the parking spot when we go to downtown Phoenix, or we have this happen, or our children are healed but we forget that it is God who really ought to get the glory. He is the creator. We're the creation. In Romans chapter 1, the Apostle Paul just really jumps on the fact that people throughout history looked at the creation of God, and rather than worshiping the Creator and giving Him the glory, they worshiped creation. And God judged them for that. They missed it. God is the one who must get the glory. Now you say, where do you see that there? Well, look at verse 8. Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh. Notice, all that the Lord had done. It's easy to skip over that. All that the Lord had done to Pharaoh, and how the Lord had delivered them. You just think, guys, those of you who have father-in-laws, or, you want to impress certain people, you think about what Moses could have done. See, this is his talking point. This is his passion. But he might have wanted to impress Jethro, and he could have said some other things like, sit down, Jethro, let me tell you about what I've been doing. You're going to be very proud of your son-in-law, Jethro. Listen, do you know what? Bushes talk to me. Yeah. You remember when I was living with you, Jethro? Back there, yeah. I was out in the wilderness. I know I haven't told you this before, but I was out in the wilderness of Midian there, and a bush said, Moses, Moses, the ground upon which you stand is holy. And I know it was God, but it was a bush talking to me. How many men do you know that bushes talk to them, Jethro? Be glad that you have a son-in-law who is so distinguished as to have even bushes talk to him. Or he might have said something like this, Jethro, just wait until you see what I can do with this rod. Yeah, this is the shepherd's rod. That that one I found on the pathway, and I used it when I was shepherding your sheep. But let me tell you, when the bush talked to me, God talked to me. He told me, Moses, what's in your hand? I said, this rod, this shepherd's rod. He said, throw it down. I threw it down, and Jethro, it became a serpent. Yeah, it was, I don't remember. I think it was a cobra. Oh, it was scary. But then God said, Moses, pick it up by the tail. Jethro, if you know anything about snakes, you know you don't pick them up by the tail. But I did. I mean, when bushes talk to you, you listen. I picked it up by the tail, and it was a rod again. And then God used me to go to Pharaoh, and I threw down that rod again, and it became a serpent. And the magicians, the fakes that worked for him, yeah, they threw down their rods, and they made them become snakes too. But then, Jethro, my rod ate up theirs. Yeah. And then I used it a lot. I really showed old Pharaoh who's boss, And we left out of Egypt, and we were along the way, and we were between the place between Mizraim and the other place. I don't remember it on the map, but it's there. But we couldn't get out, and lo and behold, Pharaoh and his army are coming behind us. But that's all right. You know what your son-in-law did? I took the rod of God, and just like Charlton Heston, I said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. And that sea opened up. He could have said that, But his first talking point, I used to tell my daughters when they're dating guys, I said, you let the conversation just lapse, and a guy starts talking about something he wants to talk about, you can usually determine that's what he's really interested in. He may talk about a lot of other things, but when he just gets to talk, when he's just sitting down talking, you'll find out what really interests him. This is the passion of Moses, the glory of God. And quite honestly, folks, the people who have the most problem with this principle are those of us, those of you, those around us who are very gifted. the ones who might have a great following from people, or they have a position of authority. And it's really easy to forget that God gets the glory instead of me, because people tell us how wonderful we are. I used to, every pastor has the problem when you go to the door and people come and they say, "Oh, that message was just wonderful." And what are you supposed to say to them? If you say to them, "Well, not really," you've just slapped them in the face and told them they don't know anything, or you sound really what do you say? Most of us have just learned to say thank you, but Dr. J. Vernon McGee said one time something I've never forgotten. He said, "Pastors, when people say those things to you at the door, accept them as perfume. You sniff it, but you don't swallow it." Some people swallow it, that they are that great, and they forget where their greatness comes from. It's God. It's Him. And He says He doesn't share His glory. For my sake, for my own sake, Isaiah 48:11, He says, "I will act. For how can my name be profaned? And my glory I will not give to another." Theologically, it's true that we as His children are allowed to shine forth the glory of God, to reflect it. But we're not God. We don't get the glory. He does. And that's why the psalmist, almost in response to this, said in Psalm 115, verse 1, "Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory, because of your loving kindness, because of your truth." God is the one who gets the glory. And reflecting on who God is, because God's glory basically is His attributes, who He is. Reflecting on who He is and what He has done ought to cause us to have a proper view of who we are and what we ought to be doing. The Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, he said, "For through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith." Now, the Apostle Paul is going to go on and say, God has gifted you. He has given every believer a spiritual gift. Some may have more than one, but he said, I'm talking about real humility here. Don't think because God has gifted you that you're hot snot. Doesn't translate too well, but that's in the Reverse Standard Version. What I want you to understand is humility does not mean that you think badly about yourself. It doesn't mean that you put yourself down. What it does mean is that you think accurately about yourself and accurately about how God works through you. Because the Apostle Paul himself could say without any arrogance, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, "Be imitators of me, as I also am of Christ." That sounds arrogant, but he wasn't talking arrogantly. In fact, in Philippians chapter 3, he tells us about how he could have been so arrogant, but all of the things that he could count for something for glory for him, he said, no, those were waste. I think you remember this passage. "If anyone else has a mind to put confidence in the flesh," Paul says, "I far more. Circumcised the 8th day of the nation of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin. I'm a Jew, I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews. As to the law, a Pharisee," which means you couldn't get any better religiously. "As to zeal, a persecutor of the church. As to the righteousness which is in the law, found blameless." Paul says, if you look at me in human eyes, I'm pretty great. But he said, I don't even look at those things. It's not that he didn't know about them. What he says is, whatever things were gained to me, those things I have counted as loss. That word "counted" is actually a banking term It means I have accounted them. I looked at the spreadsheet, and those things don't add up for me. What God has done adds up for me. He says, whatever things were gained to me, those things I have counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Those things, he said, are rubbish. Unfortunately, not everybody takes that view. Some people look at what they have, their position, as the fact that they are really, really, really great. Let me remind you of somebody. King Herod. This King Herod is not the King Herod that built the temple. This is actually his grandson. There were a lot of Herods. But let me fill you in here. This King Herod went up to Tyre and Sidon, and he was very angry with them. But they wanted to make sure they pleased him because they wanted him to do something political for them. And so, this is what we read. On an appointed day, Herod, having put on his royal apparel, took his seat on the rostrum and began delivering an address to them by way of teleprompter. And the people kept crying out, "The voice of a God, and not of a man." And immediately an angel of the Lord struck him because he did not give God the glory, and he was eaten by worms and died. What a way to go. Whoa. But the word of the Lord continued to grow and to be multiplied. I know this sounds pretty tacky, but have you had a spiritual colonoscopy lately? When you think you're just really doing great and you say things, you do things, you get to feeling the squirm in there, be careful. Be very careful. John the Baptist would be a good example to consider. He looked at himself. He evaluated himself. The people all came from Jerusalem, all the Pharisees, the religious leaders, and they said, "Who are you? Are you the Messiah? Are you the one we're expecting? Or are you the prophet?" Moses promised that a prophet would come like him. He said, are you Elijah? Are you? And they kept going on and on. He said, no, I'm not any of those. Well, who are you? He said, I am a voice. Just a voice. I'm the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make way, prepare for the coming of the Lord. Just a voice. And having said that, here's his evaluation of himself. He said, I must decrease. He must increase. He must increase. I must decrease. A little self-evaluation. Now, for those of you who might fear the worms, I think you probably don't need to. There's not really been any hard evidence that God has used that for about 2,000 years. But even though God may not take my life because I took his glory, if I'm a believer at least, there is something else I might lose. Might not be my life, but it might be my reward. This is the way Jesus put it in Matthew chapter 6. He said, beware of practicing your righteousness before men. Now, don't stop there. He's not saying you should not practice your righteousness before men. You should. You should do good things. But he said, beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. I had a professor, Dr. Stanley Toussaint, when I was at Dallas Seminary, and he was my professor. Is that me? One of you sending me a message? What time is it? Oh, well, it's nearly that time. Now you got me off. He would say, gentlemen, what this says is that when you practice before men your righteousness and you get the applause, it's paid in full. And he used to say that and say that and say that. Well, at the end of the lecture period at the end of the year, it was customary that you applaud the professor. And so he finished his lecture, and we all applauded, and at the same time went, paid in full. That's all you get. See, if that's all you're after, then you got it. You got the applause. You got people thinking you're something. You got people thinking you are God in the flesh. But that's all you get. That's it. Lessons in leadership. God's glory must be our passion. I really cannot see what time it says back there. Is that 5 minutes? Okay. Number 2, well, the kids. I got to watch out for the kids over there. God's care for others must be our priority. I will talk really fast here. Notice, Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake. See, he was not only had his passion, the glory of God, but he also realized that everything God was doing, he was doing it for Israel, not for him, not for Moses. God has always allowed us, his people, to be the reflection of who he is and what he does. That's why he called Moses. Exodus 3, verses 9 and 10. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel, God says, has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, come now and I will send you, Moses. I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. That's why he called Moses. It was not for Moses to be some kind of Messiah. It was for his people. That's why he called Moses. Going to take a guess at what the next one is? That's why he called you and me. That's why he calls us. Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works. Why? And glorify your Father who is in heaven. It all goes back to him. It's not for us. Not for us, not for us, for him. It's all about him. It's all about what he's doing with people around us. Unfortunately, Moses lapsed on this. Moses lapsed. I'll just remind you real quick, in Exodus chapter 17, God told Moses to strike the rock. You know, they were in need of water. He said, strike the rock. He struck the rock and they got water out of it. But now notice in Numbers 20, which we haven't gotten to, but I want you to see this since we're right between them. Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, assemble the congregation, and what? Speak to the rock. Speak to the rock. Well, he didn't do that. If you'll notice, then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice. But you know what he said before that? He said, why should we do this for you? They were complaining as usual. So he struck the rock thinking, well, it won't matter. We did this before. But notice the difference between Moses' attitude now. Exodus 18, Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done. Numbers 20, shall we bring forth water? You see the difference? The Lord, in one passage, we in the other. It's so easy to get disgruntled with people, with sheep. Some of you teach Sunday school classes, and sometimes it can be really tough. Others of you are praying for someone in your family to be saved, and they just continue on, and you get so tired. And others of you, you've got a neighbor who you keep talking to about Jesus. And listen, don't get so disgruntled that you lapse, that you allow who you are to stand in the way of who God is and what he can do. Bow your heads with me. I want you to ask yourself right now, is there something in your life that's causing you to really begrudge the ministry God is using you for? Let God work. Let Him show His power through you. Father, will you forgive us for those attitudes that we have? We can so easily lapse from our good attitude of it's all about you to it's all about us. And I pray, Father, that if that is our attitude this morning, that you would help us to reverse it. Help us to see what we should be and what we should do. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'd like you to stay seated and just listen to the exhortation of this song.
Feel free to sing with us on this last chorus. Be still and know He is holy. Be still and know He is God. Love Him more dearly. See Him more clearly. Be still and know He is God. He is God.
Morning. Hey, how you doing? Here again.
Give us like it happens normally. People are like, do you know you had this hole in your shirt? What's that? Did you know you had a hole in your shirt? Yes. I ripped it this morning.
That's what I heard that.
Yeah. I was just worshiping so much, and they just ripped.
Get those hands up.
I tried to accelerate it.